Right, good afternoon, and it's great to come your way once again on this third and final part of our lesson on searching for the scientific or research literature. Indeed, in the first two videos, we focused on issues of access to the literature. We looked at new paradigms in scholarly communication of publications such as open access, tools and platforms for discovery of scientific literature. And we also looked specifically at the types of searches, citation chaining, basic keyword searches, and also advanced search that involves building your search query using Boolean Logic and some other search engine techniques such as truncation using either the asterisk or the dollar sign or symbol. This moment, we are going to focus specifically on systematic searching. Now, by way of introduction, I'd like to say that systematic searching is actually more aligned to the conduct of systematic reviews. So for those who are interested in systematic reviews for meta-analysis, this type of search is the most appropriate for conducting those types of studies. However, because of the audience that we have from mixed backgrounds, I will not be delving too much into the biomedical sciences, even though that is the major area where these systematic reviews are carried out. Okay, but I will actually try and find a midpoint by rather emphasizing the general rules that can be applied to any type of search when you are focused on a narrow area and wish to actually retrieve a very comprehensive amount, or in terms of quantity, coverage of the literature, gathering nearly all or as much evidence as is possible on a very focused topic or question. That is what systematic search is about. If you remember from a basic search, we said we could also call it a scoping or simple search, because that one, we simply want to find out generally whatever discussion is going on a particular topic. Usually the topics are broad, but in a systematic search, we are focusing on a very narrow topic area and we want comprehensive search results. That is the main difference between systematic searches and other types of search. Now, the other difference that I would like you to pay attention to, which I'll be taking you through, is that in a systematic search, you pay attention to the steps involved in arriving at your search results. That is to say, you will need to develop a search strategy, beginning at your research question, or sometimes what people want to call the topic, right? So what is your search topic? Or what is your research question? That is where you're going to begin at. So at this point, I'll share my screen. Again, back to the outline for this lesson. And as I mentioned, I will be sharing this outline with you. So all the embedded links and external resources that I would like you to have a look at, you will be able to connect and do your further learning from there. Thanks. I'll share my screen now. All right, good. So yes, we have already covered basic search and advanced search. We are on systematic search. And as always, I'll draw your attention to the embedded links. You can see these are all links I have put here. So if you click on systematic here, you realize I have actually linked to a PubMed index article titled Systematic Approach to Searching, an Efficient and Complete Method to Develop Literature Searches, right? This is by Wicker M. Bremer and others. So it's a 2018 publication. It's right here. It is in the Journal of the Medical Library-Research4Life, JMLA. All right. You can get the full text right here with PMC. In our previous lesson on basic and advanced search, we have actually used PubMed in detail. So by now, I'm sure it's easy for you to navigate the interface, under full text links. You just click on the PMC tab here for a free full text to this article. It's very interesting. It gives you a comprehensive documentation on how to go about a systematic search. All right. So you will follow that link from the outline, which I'll be sharing with you, and you'll read the full content on how to do a systematic search. That's not all. I'll be showing you other sources of information. But at this point, as I already started by describing a systematic search, it is used mainly for meta-analysis or systematic review, okay, where you want to gather all the evidence available on a very narrow topic. All right. Now, I promise that I will not be biased towards the medical or biomedical sciences because of the mixed backgrounds that we have in this course. So what I'll be laying out are going to be the general rules that can apply across disciplines. All right. And then I'll be giving an example of a systematic search based on a project that I led just a month ago. All right. So bear with me. We will start right from the comment section. So if you look, all these highlighted sections are comments I have made. So in brackets, I've said that, well, systematic searches involve formulating a search strategy, which is very critical. A search strategy is very important. You'll be using Boolean logic. Thankfully, we have already come across Boolean logic. We use some of the Boolean operators in formulating searches in the previous section when we were dealing with advanced search. We looked at the Boolean OR, and we also looked at the AND operator. Well, of course, there is a third one, which is normally for excluding some of the terminologies or some of the set concepts that you don't want to see, and we call it the NOT, N-O-T, the NOT. So we are going to be looking at all these three and how they actually function. Then, of course, field codes. Yesterday, I actually mentioned some. For example, we looked at searching for certain particular terms in specific fields like title field or the mesh terms for the thesaurus of PubMed, which is the medical subject headings. Of course, other databases have their own control vocabulary or index terms, but not all databases have their own control vocabulary. Particularly most of the public ones, they do not have. So I will also include a document when I'm sharing these links with you to a list of databases and their control vocabulary. For example, if you are into Agric, you might want to consult AgroVoc. Okay, AgroVoc is the control vocabulary for the Agric discipline. But it is in a systematic search that you will need particularly to consult some of these special terminologies that are peculiar to disciplines. So I'll be sharing with you the process involved in formulating your search strategy and then conducting what we call a systematic search. So right by clicking here, it pulls out my comment on what we call search strategy formulation. And here I have listed about 12 points with some examples that I'll be sharing. So in doing a systematic search, the first thing is to formulate the research question. Now, how do you come about a research question? For those in the biomedical and health sciences, this is quite an easy thing because it's what is mainly used in systematic reviews. So you have some mnemonics like PICO that deals with the population or patient characteristics. Then you look at intervention, a comparator, and then outcome. That is for quantitative or effectiveness studies. And of course, it depends on the type of study. If you're looking at the diagnosis, therapy or treatment, prognosis, whatever it is that you are doing will determine the kind of acronym that or framework that you use in framing your question. Of course, there are others like Spider, Eclipse. Even with the PICO, there is a qualitative stable variation of it. The PICO with a small o, okay, where the P is actually population or what you might call demographic characteristics in a qualitative search. And the I is phenomenon of interest. And the CO, the C with a small o, refers to context. You can actually consult Cochrane, the Cochrane Database of Systematic Reviews, or the Jonah Briggs Institute, okay, for their evidence-based practice guidelines. And these actually document how the whole process of systematic review works and how you use some of these helpful acronyms or mnemonics in framing your questions. We will not actually go into any of that, but that is the first thing to note, that you always have a question that you want to answer. And this question will be very narrow in a particular topic area, all right? So for example, maybe you are trying to check from the literature if there is any documentation on the effectiveness of aspirin in reducing a future heart attack in the elderly. So you ask a question like, is aspirin effective in reducing a future heart attack in the elderly? Very focused question. All right. Now, we are not going to go into all of that, as I promised. All right. So after getting your question, you know exactly what you are looking for. All right. Then from that question, or if I'm allowed, for those who usually start from what we call topic. Okay, it's not really a question, but it's a topic sort of frame. You now begin to identify the key concepts. By key concepts, we mean what are the words or phrases within that topic or question that capture the whole meaning of what you are actually targeting to retrieve from any of these databases. And the trick here usually is to look for the major words of semantic value, like noun phrases, verb phrases. These are the ones that capture the true meaning of your sentence. For smaller words or parts of speech like prepositions and all of that, they only help to make the sentence grammatical. They are not necessarily bundles of meaning, all right? So we don't really concentrate on those kinds of words. So we reduce an entire research question to just about 2, 3, at most 3 terminologies that actually capture the full meaning of your question or topic. So after selecting those terms, you begin to develop them. Developing the term here means that you may have your question, but you are making assumptions that there are publications in the scholarly universe, all right, that answer the question that you have formulated. And now, what you must take note of is the fact that every author has their own set of vocabulary or lexicon from which they pick the terms that they choose to use to express the ideas, all right? And so, for example, one author may write and use terms like carcinoma, another will choose to use lesions, another will decide to use neoplasms, a different author, cancers. All these terminologies map onto the same concept. All right. So when you want to, retrieve content that other people have generated, you do not necessarily know the specific words that they use to represent the concepts that you are describing in your own words. And so once you have identified the key concepts in your own question or topic, you will now need to think around what other possible terms or words could be used to express the same ideas that you have expressed using your own words. All right. At this level, you can easily, guess some of these options. For example, in the example question I gave on the aspirin and its effectiveness in reducing a future heart attack in the elderly, that was the statement I framed. But someone can write and decide to use aged instead of the word elderly. So automatically you know that the word aged might be synonym to elderly. All right. At the same time, somebody could decide, well, prevent, control, like we saw yesterday. These two words seem to usually go together in most of the literature. So another author may write and use the word control instead of prevent. All right. They may not be directly related to the same idea, but in general, in generic terms, they almost mean the same thing. Of course, prevention and control don't mean exactly the same thing, but of course, there are no true synonyms. All right. There are no true synonyms. So all we are trying to look at is similarity or expressing the same idea around the topic. Now, having done that at your personal level, there is also help, okay? There is also help that comes mostly from the discipline that you are working from. For example, if you are in the medical sciences, okay, medical science information professionals have developed index terms or what we call control vocabulary or thesaurus that allows you to actually view, usually in a tree form, okay, it's like a tree. You view the relationship, okay, semantic relationships between terminologies so that you see there are some words that are broader terminologies to others. Others are like subtopics within a particular discipline, all right? And so it helps you to identify synonyms and also to choose the vocabulary of your particular discipline. So you may be expressing a certain idea, all right, which is fine in your natural language, but in a particular discipline, that same terminology will be expressed perhaps differently using a more technical word or jargon. So that is what control vocabulary or the thesaurus of a particular database or discipline helps us to achieve, to identify what the technical or more discipline-specific terminologies are for the concepts that we are trying to express in our ordinary everyday language. All right. So that helps to build a very solid query with a lot of synonyms that will help us to capture as much literature as possible. The reason for doing this is, don't forget, I mentioned in systematic search, we are targeting all possible applications on a particular specific topic. So you might want to expand your search to include as many alternative terminologies for expressing the same concept or idea as possible. Now, having gone through those two levels of identifying and selecting the particular search terminologies, it means you are actually ready to do your search. But now, again, in our previous lesson on searching, we realized that in advanced search, it is possible for us to determine the fields from which a particular terminology should be searched. So for example, I decide that, well, for this particular terminology, search all the fields. You can search abstracts, the title, other keywords of the author or whatever. Search all these places for this particular term. But for another term, search only the title. And for the third term, search only the control vocabulary, the index word, which is, for example, if you're using the medical subject headings, the mesh term for that particular concept. That is one thing you have to keep in mind. You use the field codes or you apply certain fields to specific terminologies or concepts or keywords that you are using to build your query. Then, of course, we saw in the previous example on our advanced search that it is possible to select terminologies that have possible variations in terms of suffixation or suffixes, how the word ends. So, for example, I know that The example question I gave is aspirin effective in preventing a future heart attack in the elderly? The word preventing there could have become prevention when it is nominalized, all right? So I would rather say prevent, and then I use any of the truncation symbols, either the dollar mark or the asterisk, to indicate to the search engine, depending on the particular database I am using. And here again, I'll stress the fact that every database is different. And so if you choose a particular database, then you must master its syntax. Okay, how do you create the structure for the system to interpret your logic based on how you combine the search terms with all these techniques and Boolean logic in order for it to be able to map your search correctly? And you saw the example we did yesterday, all right? When we have to even go back into board math and understand that when we are dealing with concept sets, or where we are using the or operator for synonyms, and these occur arbitrarily in our structure, we have to be more careful and make sure that we bracket these terms accurately and ensure the search engine operates those brackets separately before combining with the end Boolean operator. We saw an example of that in PubMed yesterday. And I said, if you master that, then it means you are good to go with what we call a command line search. That means you can actually key in all this advanced stuff right in the basic search without necessarily going to use the default tools that are available for advanced searching in a particular database. Now, apart from all these techniques, we also learned from yesterday's lesson or the previous lesson on basic and advanced search that when your search results come, you have the ability to refine them. Now, refining here means a number of things. You look at the results that have come, how close they are to what you are looking for, and then you make a decision. Refining can mean you are narrowing the results by selecting maybe a more current period, let's say the last 5 years, or a certain specific type of study, perhaps systematic reviews or book chapters. All this depends on your information need, all right? It can also mean that you are broadening the search. For example, when we did our search in the previous lesson and we activated certain filters like the year or the date filter for the last 5 years, we saw that we had 0 results, 0. But then once we took off that filter, we had some results. You get a picture. So in refining your search, you test the outcome against your query or the input or expected results. And if they don't really match, you must refine or edit your query or apply certain features that will help you to get what you are looking for. All right. And when you are doing that, it is helping you to improve the search strategy. What you must not forget is that, as I mentioned a couple of times already, every search engine or database works differently. And so the search syntax for PubMed will not be the same as the search syntax for Scopus, right? And so if you are going to be conducting your search in Scopus, then you must abreast yourself with the guidelines on how to effectively search Scopus, how to build the search syntax, how to construct the query, so that Scopus will be able to work on it. I'll be using an example from Scopus, but we used PubMed in our previous example. I'll now use Scopus in the next example for you to just have a fair idea how these databases actually differ in terms of their function and the kinds of techniques you can apply in them to maximize your search output. Then, of course, once you are able to adapt your search terms and syntax to the various databases, you can finalize your strategy. And important in all this is documentation. As I mentioned, what you are doing in PubMed may not be necessarily the same thing you are doing in Scopus or the same thing that you are doing in perhaps Dimensions. And so, depending on the databases that you are searching for your document, in a systematic search, documentation of the strategy is very key, because ultimately you want your results or your search to be reproducible, all right? So that if you are making a claim, anybody should be able to apply your search strategy and come up with the same results. That is what distinguishes a systematic search from the other types of search. So in a systematic search, you're actually constructing a whole search strategy and you are documenting your steps, okay, through all the search strategies that you are building and how these perhaps differ, or how you adapted them differently to the different databases or information retrieval systems that you are searching from. Then, of course, the ultimate is that you want to download or retrieve the records for a particular assignment. It can be a term paper, a major research project, whatever it is that you are doing these kinds of searches for. And we will be looking at the Mendeley Reference Manager after this particular section. So, of course, the last point is you should export your citations or references to a citation manager or a reference management software. The reason is this software helps you to actually organize, read, annotate, collaborate, and also cite or reference documents that you have got from your search when you are doing your own research report. All right. So at this point, I will pause, give you an example search for publications that I led a team at the UHAS Library here to do just a month ago. All right. But before then, I would like to speak about the Boolean logic because it's going to feature prominently in systematic searches. So let's just take a look at what we call a Boolean logic. I tried to explain in our previous search that the focus was not on systematic searches. And so we didn't delve much into the logic. We only used the operator. But I will explain the logic here. As I mentioned, the three main logical operators for searching in advanced search are the OR operator, the AND operator, and the NOT operator. Now, by the example statement here or topic, malaria prevention in Ghana, we can create advanced search queries using Boolean logic as depicted in these images. In the first instance, we write control or prevention. Now, malaria prevention in Ghana are the three main concepts or key concepts from that topic. And if we want to break that down and we want to look at how we can combine these terms in advanced search using Boolean logic, we find that malaria prevention Ghana are all unique concepts. That is, none of these concepts is synonym to the other. They are all standing on their own, having their own meaning different from each other. But because our intention is to collect enough information on each of the topics, we'll try to find out which of these terms could have been, introduced differently by another author. And we realize, well, prevention could be a possible candidate because an author could, instead of prevention, say control. And if the purpose of our search is to collect all information, whether on prevention or control, then we will need to introduce control. It is also possible that we are aware that usually a lot of authors write on both control and prevention of a particular disease, but we are interested only in prevention, not control. Therefore, we can also use the same Boolean logic to eliminate all publications that deal with control of a particular condition or disease. So in the first instance, here we are looking at including all studies which are on either control alone, and I hope all of us on this call understand Venn diagram. From mathematics, we learned about Venn diagram, all right? It's the same thing as Boolean logic. So papers that contain only control should be retrieved. Papers that contain only prevention of malaria should also be retrieved. Papers that contain both the prevention and control of malaria. So that means if there are publications that focus only on prevention of malaria, we want to see them. If there are also publications that focus solely on the control of malaria, we want to see them. If there are also publications that actually detail both prevention and control, we want to see them. So you realize that you end up retrieving content that is quite explosive. It's a larger amount of results when you use the or operator, because or simply means get for me any of these terms. And that any can mean this or that or both. That's the meaning. So when you use or, know that you are exploding your search or you are broadening your search. For that matter, the or operator is only used with synonyms. That is terminologies that refer to the same concept or idea. All right, good. Now, how do we use the AND operator? The AND operator is used to combine unique terms. So as I mentioned, malaria, prevention, Ghana, they are all unique terms. And so if we choose to find documents that deal only with malaria prevention, then we will say malaria and prevention, all right? In that case, it is only this shaded region, the intersection of these two sets, that will be retrieved. So there may be several documents that deal with or treat malaria, perhaps causes, control, whatever. And if you look here, the term or the word prevention also does not necessarily mean anything to malaria. Do you get it? If you want to take it as a separate concept, it can be prevention of flu. It can be prevention of road accidents. Do you get it? But because we are combining prevention with malaria using the AND operator, we are saying to the system, look for documents in which both these terms, malaria and prevention, co-occur or are treated together. So it will not go retrieving content on prevention of any other thing. Neither will it go retrieve documents that deal with malaria in any other sense, but only documents that deal with malaria prevention. This is what you get. So if you observe closely, while the OR operator explodes your search, for which reason it is used specifically to combine synonyms so that you have enough alternative expressions of the same concept as possible. Okay, as many alternative ways of referring to the same thing. That's what it means to use the OR. The AND, on the other hand, narrows your search. It reduces the amount of results you get because it must find the two terms together. Otherwise, it won't retrieve any one of them. That is how the AND logic functions, at the intersection of the search terms, whereas the OR functions as the union of the search terms. Now, that tells us something about what the AND can do. You see, if you increase the use of the AND, you reduce the amount of results that you get. Because the moment the search terms become more and they are combined using the AND, you are telling the system, retrieve only documents in which all these terms occur. So let's suppose we are dealing with control separately as a unique term and not as a synonym as we did in the first instance when we used the or. In this case, we are saying, look for documents in which malaria prevention and control occur together. This will have a smaller amount of results because there could be, you can look at the intersections. If you look at the intersection here, this is the intersection of malaria and control, this whole space. The intersection of all three plus the malaria and control only. You can also see malaria and prevention only here. Then you can also see prevention and control only here. But if you say prevention and control of what? It can be prevention and control of HIV/AIDS. You get it? But once we introduce the third term, malaria, we are specific to the particular disease. For that matter, we are telling the search retrieval system only documents that contain all these three terms together must be retrieved. So if there are documents that contain malaria control without prevention, they will not be retrieved. If there are documents that contain malaria prevention without control, they will not be retrieved. If there are documents that contain prevention and control of some other condition, disease, or situation, which is not related to malaria, they will also not be retrieved. So just look at the size of the shaded portions and then understand the message that it sends to you concerning your use or abuse of the Boolean operators. All right, so at this point, it is very important or critical to take note of how the AND logic works. All right, the AND will narrow the result, narrows the result. And so you must never abuse the AND operator. Do not use it excessively, because as you can see in the example bottom left here, once we introduce a fourth term, Ghana, and now our query becomes malaria and prevention and control and Ghana, look at the amount of results that we expect to get. Only those with very sharp eyes, or if you are using a magnifying glass or you have some spectacles on, will be able to actually view that there's actually a shading here where I am pointing at right now, a very small dot of the green. Compared to all the shaded regions from all these other diagrams, you realize that the excessive use of the AND operator actually reduces the result to the extent that you possibly might have zero results. So take note and do not abuse the AND operator. Now at this point, having looked at the OR and the AND and how excessive use of the AND can actually yield no results, I want us to look at the last one, the NOT operator. The NOT operator. Now the NOT operator is used to eliminate certain terms that we know will usually co-occur with others, but which we are not interested in. So we want to exclude them from the results. One way of using it is that prior to keying in your search query, you already know that some of these terms co-occur together almost all the time. For example, prevention and control of a disease. Most authors write on these two aspects together in a single research. So if your focus is on the prevention of malaria and not control, then you will need to express that using the Boolean logic to eliminate or exclude all documents in which malaria control occurs. And if you watch the diagram closely, it means we are saying malaria and prevention only. For those who remember Venn diagram, malaria and prevention only. So it will exclude even the intersection of all the three terms. That is, even that part of malaria and prevention, which contain a small part of control, it will be eliminated. Only prevention and malaria as two terms will be retrieved. Wherever there's control, even if prevention is in that document, because of the control, it will not be retrieved. So that is what the NOT is used for. Now, the second scenario is that you first run the search. For example, I ran a search for CT imaging and cancer management. And then I realized the results that come initially contain other procedures like FDG, PET, but I really want just CT imaging, all right? So once I realized that my initial result has retained some other terminologies that I did not expect to see or I was not interested in, I can now use the NOT to refine that initial search. So now I go back to do the search and then I say CT imaging and cancer management. Then I now add not PET, not FDG, not whatever other term was retrieved in conjunction with the CT regarding cancer management. I am eliminating them using the not. Now, the not excludes those terms that come after it. So those are the two ways in which either you already knew that it is likely this term will come and you initially put it there to eliminate it, or after your first search, when you are seeing results that contain terminologies you are not interested in, then you can simply use the not as an extension, add it to the query. So not this, not that. And for each term that you are removing, you have to put the not there. So with the example that I gave, where CT imaging came together with other terminologies like PET, FDG, it means you have not PET, then you have to repeat not FDG. So as many terms that come that you want to exclude, you have to use the not to eliminate each one of them by typing that particular terminology after the not. So in brief, this is all about the Boolean logic and how it operates. So remember, the Boolean operators are always in uppercase. So capital letters OR for or, AND for AND, and NOT for the not operators. This is very key to understanding how we are going to be demonstrating a systematic search involving a search strategy in which we create a whole query, all right, using all the tools available to us and our own knowledge of the topic area. So at this point, I'll go back to our outline and then share with you an example systematic search. Here, I made a promise that because we have taken note of the mixed background of the people on this call, we do not want to restrict ourselves to the biomedical or the health science literature section. I'm trying my best to make things more generic. So I want to use a particular example. You know, just a month or less, okay, ago, I led a team at the UHAS Library to generate some bibliometrics for the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. We wanted to see how much work in terms of research publication or output has been done by affiliates of UHAS, okay, people who are affiliated to the University of Health and Life Sciences in Ghana. We want to find out their research publications that are related to specific SDGs. So look at what we did. We pick a particular SDG, and the purpose is to find out the works emanating from UHAS, the research output emanating from University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ghana here, related to or on that particular topic. So get the picture very clear. At this point, how many such terms do you think we have? First, let me give the example of SDG 3. So SDG 3, UHAS, only 2 terms, all right? And these 2 terms are unique terms. Sustainable Development Goal 3, then University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ghana. Only 2 terms. However, if you look at SDG 3, to arrive at what we call SDG 3, we need to break that term down into 8 smaller components because that is a broad term. Sustainable Development Goal 3 is a very broad term. What constitutes Sustainable Development Goal 3? We need to find that out. It is all those constituents that make up Sustainable Development Goal 3. Of course, any researcher would necessarily focus on a very small or narrow area within Sustainable Development Goal 3 or SDG 3. If SDG 3 is talking about good health and well-being, of course, nobody can write a research article on good health and well-being in any comprehensive manner, but could tackle an aspect of good health and well-being. Perhaps that person might be writing on stunting and wasting in children under 5 years in Ohio municipality. It is a very narrow area of study, but it constitutes a study on good health and well-being. Another person will be talking about sports injuries, all right? But that publication of sports injuries constitutes good health and well-being. Someone may even talk about road accidents. It constitutes an aspect of good health and well-being. Another person may look at maybe alcohol dependency or alcoholism. You see? So how do we come by the search terms that will actually describe SDG 3? Then we combine all of that with the University of Health and Allied Sciences. And since we are looking for bibliometrics, we want to find out about publication, statistics and all manner of insights. Definitely, we will have to go into a citation database. Now, if you look at the descriptions I've given so far, you see that first, we look at the question. The question is, what are the research outputs emanating from University of Health and Allied Sciences in relation to or on SDG 3? That's our question. But all that big English is not anything more than just two terms. SDG 3, UHAS, full stop. All right. So I'm going to take you through the process right now. I have linked the document here. I'll click on the link. Don't forget, I'm going to share this outline so you also have access to all. You can just go and check the procedure, right? So if I go into this document right now, excellent. We are going to be seeing the process involved. Okay, I'm going to jump all the introductory comments, they are not necessary. But right from this page, I indicated something very important, help guides that I provided to lead the team, all right? First, we need to find out, and we are talking about systematic search, so observe the procedure very closely. Because I was working with a team, I needed to make sure everybody was on the same page. Because we are doing a systematic search, and everybody must get every stage of the process very accurately. Otherwise, we will have trouble synthesizing our results. All right. So the first thing I did was to say, okay, fine. Since we are going to be using Scopus and indexing database, okay, for the bibliometric insights, first, there must be a good knowledge of the Scopus database, what it is, how it indexes its articles, if we are going to be mapping our own concepts onto the Scopus index terms for us to be able to retrieve something meaningful. So we look at the Scopus access and use the author versus index keywords, all those aspects, okay? So we are trying to find out, does Scopus have control vocabulary? If it does not have, how does it index articles? And also, yes, Scopus does not have a control vocabulary, like PubMed that uses the medical subject headings mesh. But Scopus has its own way of indexing articles by referring to study authorities. We needed to do all that investigation first. So take notes, you need to master your database. You have to understand what that database is, how it indexes its articles or publications, and what kind of search syntax it operates on. Some of the techniques may not be acceptable. For example, I made mention in the previous lesson on search techniques when we're doing the advanced search that Scopus, for example, does not give you an exact phrase search when you use the double quotes. It will give you a relative phrase search. But if you want to do an exact phrase search, you need to have that database specific knowledge that Scopus will use curly brackets instead of double quotes. You see, that is very different from PubMed, very different from CINAHL, very different from Embase, from dimensions. So depending on the database, you need to do a proper study of the database first to understand how it operates. Then having done that, we have to look at the issue of thesaurus. If we cannot find a control vocabulary for Scopus, looking at the SDG that we are working with, is it possible to look for a third party or some other established control vocabulary? For example, if I said SDG 3, good health and well-being, naturally, the mesh will come into my mind because the medical subject headings will document comprehensively all key terminologies related to health and well-being. Then, of course, I added tutorials and other things that my colleagues should have a look at. All right, good. Now, when we go down, I now start to give another set of help guides. We are finished with the database that we are going to be dealing with. Now, before we approach that database, the search strategy that we are going to formulate, how we are going to identify our key search terms. I already mentioned that the goal 3 is one term. UHAS is another term. It's only 2 key terms, that's all. But we need to be able to identify the various ways in which Sustainable Development Goal 3 has been captured by several authors. And how we will be able to do that? We can't just sit down and simply guess or just think very hard out of our own minds to imagine what other authors that will be publishing are actually publishing on, or what kind of terminologies they are using to describe Sustainable Goal 3. We cannot. So I simply directed, okay, the global goals were developed by the UN. So let's go and have a study of the UN global goals itself and look at the definitions that the UN gives to each of the global goals. SDG 3 is our focus right now, as an example. So we'll go there, look at the SDG 3, and see whether the source document breaks down that Sustainable Development Goal 3, good health and well-being, into various constituent parts that constitute synonyms or the various subtopics within that broad topic area, which you can use to try and map the index terms that are in the Scopus database in order to retrieve relevant records. See the picture? So yes, we go there. Then these are the indications I've given you. Consider the full SDG title on the default goal overview page. That is one step. So even the SDG 3, good health and well-being, is just a catchword that has been taken out of the entire broad concept of what good health and well-being is, or what the goal is targeted at. So what is the full title for that SDG 3? I have asked that the team look first at that, because that will help us to identify more terminologies. Then 2, select the targets and indicators tab to read about the narrow subject topic areas encapsulated by the SDG. You see? So after looking at the full name or title for that particular global goal, SDG 3 in this instance, now click on the targets and the indicators and see whether a UN's definition for the global goal 3, it has brought up terms that we can use as keywords to map out the search terms that we want to use in a syntax with any other database. It could be PubMed, Scopus. Scopus is our ultimate database, but that's where we can get the metrics that we are looking for. But of course, we could match our search terms with any other database, all right, that we feel can bring out the results on the topic area of good health and well-being. And the Mendeley databases or search interfaces, like whether we are using COVID, okay, or we are using the PubMed search interface for Mendeley, that would have been a great source of information on health and well-being, all right, take notes. All right, then the third indication I gave was that you now select the progress and info tab to read a brief report on the progress towards attainment of the goal. See, so other people have written reports on the SDG. The UN has taken comprehensive reports, synthesized them to give an update. Within these reports, it is possible to find many more terminologies or keywords that can refer to the SDG 3 at a more specific level, which we will now be using to construct our search query. We are talking about formulating a search strategy. At this stage, we have identified from our own question about what are the publications emanating from the University of Health and Life Sciences on Global Goal 3 or Sustainable Development Goal 3. That's our question. And we are saying that that whole question comes down to just 2 keywords, SDG 3 and UHAS. But before we can tell what SDG 3 is, we needed to find other synonyms. We needed to find narrower concepts or subtopics under the SDG 3, good health and well-being, to be able to map out individual publications in these index databases or the citation database we are going to be using in order to tell the true story about publications coming out of UHAS on this particular SDG. So from the above steps, it should be possible to identify keywords that are used to describe and refer to the focus of the particular SDG. These keywords can then be refined using Scopus index keywords or the mesh database and the right search query built to retrieve the requisite results. Great idea. So let's see what happens. I'll go to that site, just give you a fair idea what exactly we did in order to arrive at our search query. So if we go to the global goals right now, the UN global goals. All right, while we are waiting for it to load, I'll just continue from the outline or from the document that I linked to. So if you go down, you realize that what I have done here, what you are seeing here is a Microsoft Word document. And that's one critical thing to note. You must document your search strategy. So everything that we're doing, I was making notes in order to be able to, analyze the process that I went through with my team to achieve the desired result. The fact is, whatever we are doing here in terms of methodology should be something that can be replicated. Okay, it should be a reproducible process. So if anyone wants to test this to be sure that truly, if we claim UHAS has 1,500 publications on SDG 3, if the person follows our procedure, the processes that we have documented, will the person arrive at the same results? You get a picture. So systematic search is concerned with reproducibility of the process, reproducibility of the search methodology. So documentation is one other thing that separates systematic search from the other types of search. In the previous lesson on advanced search, which we use PubMed to demonstrate, I showed you an interesting feature of PubMed that allowed us to have a history of all our search, okay, with details of how the algorithms used by PubMed translated our search query or mapped our search query onto PubMed's own index terms before executing the search to give us the results. That's one critical part of the documentation process. We should be able to develop a query, all right? And that query should follow the syntax that is executable by the particular search engine or database. Now, in this case, while we are still waiting for the SDG page to load, it looks like our internet is very slow today. I just want to share with you that when we went to that site, from my documentation, I saw the full title for SDG 3, which is simply captured as good health and well-being. It's actually this: ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Now, look at this picture. So if someone is writing on stunting and wasting in children under 5, that person is actually fulfilling SDG 3 because it says at all ages. The same way, if someone is writing on maternal mortality, okay, or mother's health, the person is fulfilling the same SDG 3. So I needed to help break down this whole composite or broad term SDG 3, good health and well-being, into these constituent parts that will help us completely capture all the work that has been done in relation to this particular SDG. I believe that site is open now, so let's go and check out what is there. Good. So this is the Sustainable Development Goals page. And when you go here, you can see the summary. It tells you there are 17 goals, 169 targets. So far, 3,111 events have happened. There are 1,307 publications so far, and 5,489 actions taken globally, all right, globally. Now, if I was interested in development goal 3, so I click on this one, goal 3, and we'll see the steps that we took and how we arrived at identifying the keywords. It is still loading. I'll go back to the documented page in Word. So don't forget, you must get a text processing document to document every step of the way. So after getting the main title, you see that I started underlining what I thought were the keywords for me: health, promote, well-being. Okay, so for me, I will look for a term like health promotion, well-being. These are all key terms or keywords that manifest or reflect the SDG 3. Then I started to look at breaking down the SDG now into targets and indicators. So SDG 3, what are the targets? 3.1, reduce the global maternal mortality. Have you seen it? So now I underline this term, maternal mortality. So we are now going to the narrow areas of focus under that broad topic of good health and well-being. So maternal mortality is a key term. Then if I look at the indicators, I still have maternal mortality ratio. The ratio is not important here. Proportion of births attended by skilled health personnel. So I underline births, attended or attained, then skilled health personnel. Over here, I can summarize this to mean trained midwives. Okay. So these are the processes that we used to try and identify the key terms. Now, I will not want to bother taking you through every single one of these because there are so many. You can see this tall table that I created with the various targets and indicators. Then after that, I decided to capture the terms. So maternal mortality is an identified term, birth attendant, under 5 mortality, neonatal mortality, HIV, AIDS. So as you can see, these are all terminologies that we found after going down the entire SDG. This is just SDG 3, all right? So after all of that, we decided, okay, let's look at the terminologies we have identified directly from the UN Global Goals, and then let's try to see if we can enhance this terminology by adding some kinds of synonyms. So we look at maternal mortality, for example. So, okay, fine. For maternal mortality, we can have a broader term like maternal health. You see? So all the terms after the slash gives you how we're trying to find alternative ways of expressing the same ideas. Because, watch this, at this point, all we are trying to do is to break down one of the only two terms that we found from our search question. Our question was, what are the research outputs or publications emanating from University of Health and Life Sciences on SDG 3? So to find these research outputs, the key words or key terms here are SDG 3 and UHAS, only two. But SDG 3, in that bulky form as a concept, is not something that anybody will write on. If we are trying to locate an article in a database, individual authors write on specific topics within a certain discipline. So you are making an assumption that that database contains documents that can answer your question. So it's an assumption. And when you are trying to make assumptions, you must make very logical assumptions and complete ones, of course, understanding that nobody will usually write a research paper and say SDG 3. That is too broad. The person will only pick a very narrow area of the SDG 3. And so what we are trying to do here is to see how we can break down SDG 3 into its constituent parts and target the narrow areas that various authors would have written on, so that when we now put all these together, we'll now find the big picture of what UHAS has published in relation to SDG 3. So that's what we are doing here. So we identified birth attendant from the SDG 3 description, and that target, I think that was 3.1 or so. But we know that will mean midwife, or which again can be pluralized midwives. All right. So now we have gone to this second stage of trying to see if we can find alternative terms for all these. At the same time, there were some terms that we felt we could take out. For example, when we got such terms as ambient air pollution and safe water and safe air, we realized that, look, we could use certain broad terms like just pollution or soil pollution or contamination to represent these things. So we don't need to go into all those smaller words. I'll tell you why or how we came by that. So at this stage, we're doing our own things, bringing our own mind to bear. Then the next stage is we wanted to see all these terms that we have found here. Okay, so you can see anything that repeated, like childbirth, child health, newborn health, maternal health, because we already have them. And over here, we even have reproductive health as a broader topic, which covers all these. So we can eliminate some of the terms, all right? After doing that one-on-one matching and trying to find, based on our own understanding of the topic area, alternative expressions, then we said, okay, we should now go into the medical subject headings, the mesh, and search for each one of these terms individually to see whether the mesh has an entry for these terms and what do they mean in medical terminology. We did that. And so you can see all these terms that you are seeing here, maternal mortality, it was actually pulled from the mesh. But one thing I want to observe is what operator we're using here. We're using the or operator for all these many terms that you are seeing here. Maternal mortality or maternal health services or midwifery or child mortality or child health services or. Why were we using the or for all these? That's a tall, you can see, that's a tall query. Well, I hope it's not daunting. Let me tell you the truth. The very truth here is that searching is difficult. Nobody should deceive you about that one. And the processes you are seeing us go through right now are very time consuming. You need to pay attention to detail and you need to be sure you are very accurate. Don't forget the computer terminology giggle, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't quality assure all these small pieces of data you are pulling on a particular topic, you are sure to find results that will be way, way, way off target. Or sometimes you will not be able to build the right query and you might end up getting 0 results. Not because the documents are not there, but because you did not take time to master the art of building your search strategy and formulating a workable query. And perhaps you did not take time to adapt that query to the particular search system that you are using. And for that matter, it returns no results. So this can be really a daunting task. In fact, your search strategy alone can take about 30% of the whole research task. That is even when you are very efficient, because this is where your level of sensitivity and precision, okay, are hanging in a balance. You need to make sure you achieve an equilibrium, all right? The recall and precision. How much of the documents on your topic are you able to retrieve? Now, how much of that retrieved document on the topic are actually relevant and useful is a whole game of technical thinking and balancing of the acts. And so, if you see the kind of detailed work we are doing here, it is very exhaustive and it's very also exhausting, okay, very time consuming and tiring, but you need to pay attention to every. So imagine all these terms that we put on just that simple Sustainable Development Goal 3, good health and well-being. A very simple sounding or looking term, but it takes hundreds of smaller concepts to actually make it up. But as I mentioned, your eyes should be on the Boolean that we used here. We use all throughout, because whether it is salmonella food poisoning, or plant poisoning, or mushroom poisoning, or mercury poisoning, or lead poisoning, or gas poisoning, or fluoride poisoning, or carbon tetrachloride poisoning, or carbon monoxide, whether it's any of these things, it all constitutes or means the same thing as good health and well-being research. That is the reason why we use the all throughout. As I mentioned, there were only 2 keywords from our search question that we posed, which is UHAS and SDG3. For that matter, we can only use the end only once. That is when we are combining it with UHAS. I hope you get the picture. So for all the terminologies that we're finding under SDG3, they all refer to the same concept. They all refer to the same SDG3. Therefore, they will all be odd. It is only the UHAS that will be ended to this whole set of odd terms in order to retrieve the results. Well, I hope that I have been able to describe this accurately. So at this point, I'll go on to open Scopus. We have a temporary account that gives me access to Scopus. Your university will have access to various databases. Please talk to your librarians. They will help you to have access to your various subscribed resources. I'm only using a temporary login as an example to show how this is done. And I'm going to be using the Scopus database specifically. All right, so find out from your librarian if you have access to Scopus. All right, so let me go to portal, Research4Life, and try to log in. Okay, so log in. All right, thankfully I still have access. So I'm going to databases. And this lists the first 20 in alphabetical order. So I'm going for the S, Scopus. Okay, it stops at G, so see more. And now I can go down. I hope to locate Scopus down here. All right, it's right here, Scopus database. All right, now in this environment, constructing the search query is done in advanced search mode. So watch critically what I will be doing. So I will go straight to advanced document search. As you can see, in Scopus, there are 3 levels of metrics you can hope to do: document level metrics, author level metrics, and affiliation or research organization level metrics. But of course, this tutorial is not about Scopus. All right, so we're not going to go into any of that. We are simply looking at how we are doing systematic searching. And don't forget, I spoke about documentation. I showed you how I use Word document to document our entire search strategy. I spoke about first identifying the key words or terms from your own question. So we are going into advanced search. And right here, let me explain. I shared in the previous lesson the advanced search mechanism of PubMed. And what you are looking at here is definitely different from what we saw in PubMed. And that's exactly what I've stressed several times, that every database has its own scheme or ways of operating. So here in Scopus, let's start by looking at the query box. It says enter query string here. So if I click here, it means I'm ready to enter my query. But before I enter any query there, look on the right here, because this is where we are going to build a query. Okay, so first, it tells you if you are looking for operators in the Scopus database, you have the AND operator, and it says what? Use AND when you want your results to include all terms, and the terms may be far apart. All right, they may be far apart. So when you use this AND, you are telling the system, well, in this document, there must be this and there must be that. It doesn't matter where they occur. Use all when your results must include one or more of the terms, such as synonyms, alternate spellings, or abbreviations. Documents that contain any of the words will be found. Any of the words. So you see, Scopus is even giving us definitions for the Boolean operators. That is important. So you must study every single search interface or database to understand what they mean by the operators they are using and how you should use it. Then it says, and not. Yes, of course. In my introduction that I gave on the Booleans, I mentioned only not. But yes, it is sometimes also called or written as and not. All right, it's the same thing. You could write not without the and. But here in Scopus, it is strictly telling you, you must choose the and not operator to exclude, as I mentioned, specific terms. Then Scopus has some additional operators. It says pre. All right. So in this database, it's a pre/number means preceded or precedes by, where the first term in the query must precede the second by a specific number of terms. All right. In fact, this is what we used to call the proximity operator. You see, the nearness. So it is telling you should define by how many other terms or words this particular term you are entering should be preceded. So the n here, okay, the n represents the number of word distance, okay, from the term that you have entered. We are not going to be using any of that. I also mentioned that in systematic search, you pay attention to field codes. We did an example in the previous advanced search tutorial, right? Where we're picking things like mesh terms, title, and all of that, remember? Yes, so field codes. Right here, Scopus defines its own field codes. It says, well, for textual content or for affiliation, for authors, all these. Let's take textual content, for example. So if you want field codes for textual content, let's go down to the arrow here. It says you can find field codes for abstract, that is ABS. So if I enter any keyword here and I indicate to the system ABS, it means I mean abstract. So you see how it is important to study your database and understand how it specifically refers to these things. Then if you see all, then it means all fields. And what are the fields? It will be ABS, it will be affil, that's affiliation, atnam, auth, collab, chem, odin, conf, DOI. You see? So if you use all as a field code, it will contain or to search looking into all those fields. Then there's another one, doc title abstract, which is coded as title-ABS or apps. So that means you are telling the system for this particular term, look strictly in the title and the abstract only, not anywhere else. Then, of course, there's one that will look at the title, the abstract, and the keyword. Another one will look at title, abstract, keyword, and author. And these are the codes, all right? So you will need to indicate to the system where you want the particular terms you are searching to be looked for by the system. So all that said, and knowing that there are field codes to apply to your specific terms when we are doing the textual content search, and that there are Boolean logic that you can apply, I said something you must learn your database and understand its syntax. See this thing here, that's a search tips with a question mark, or usually we know this means help. Help means you have tips on how to do something. Now, if you open this, you see that Scopus actually gives you a lot of information on how you can do your searches in this database more efficiently. So we say, how can I best use advanced search? An advanced search allows you to enter complex search queries using blah, 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 blah. All right, so then it gives you definitions, the operators, the field codes, find exact. I'm interested in this one, so let's look at this particular one. If you want to find exact, phrases, it says there are two ways of searching for phrases: an exact search and a loose or approximate phrase, depending on how exact a match you want to find. And let's look at what these two ways are. Let me simply accept a cookie so that I can see everything. All right. So what are these two ways? Now, if you want the loose or approximate phrases, it says for the loose phrase, you see, you use the double quotes, heart attack. Well, first you have indicated where you want to look, title, abstract, keyword, and then you put in bracket heart attack. It says this will search for documents where heart attack appear together in the title, abstract, or keywords. Okay. Now, it is a phrase, but it's quite a loose phrase. If it is not a loose phrase, here there is no quotation mark around it. It's the same title, abstract, keyword search, but just heart attack without any quotation marks around it. It will search for documents where heart and attack appear together or separately in the title, abstract, or keyword. You see, so if you write it like this without the quotation marks, it will not bring the heart and attack necessarily together as a phrase. Heart can appear anywhere in the document where we have indicated title, abstract, or keyword. Attack can also appear anywhere. So if it's a document that is talking about how evil-hearted attackers are, attack and heart appear, so they'll come, but not necessarily about the disease heart attack. No. You see, then let's look at the other one. What if you want a very exact search? Now look at this. There are rules. So of course, you can read this later if you have access to Scopus. That's interesting. But the exact phrase, not the loose one, the very exact phrase, it says that to find documents that contain an exact phrase, enclose the phrase in braces. That is in this curly bracket. That is so oyster, toadfish. The result will be this. This includes any stop words, spaces, and punctuation in which you included in the braces. So if you put anything like to, on, in, prepositions and all those ones, it will include all of them because this one means exactly as I have typed it. In other databases, the inverted commas would have sufficed for the exact phrase, but you see in Scopus, it is not. If you want that effect of exactly as I have typed this, then it must be braces or what we call curly brackets. Then it says in braces heart attack or heart attack without a hyphen will retain different results because the dash is included. So of course, it will mean that you are saying exactly this. So if there's a document that even has heart attack, but that heart attack is not written with the hyphen, that document will be retrieved. That's the meaning. All right. Then of course, it tells us more things about wildcards. And if you look up here, it talks about truncation. So it's that here, Scopus takes the asterisk and all of that. Good. So that was just basically to show you around how you get search tips and learn your database, okay, or your search interface to be sure that you are actually doing the right thing and you are getting the right results. So let's get back to Scopus. So let's assume that we are actually looking for publications emanating from, which institutions I use? Maybe UHAS again, all right, on reproductive health, okay, reproductive health. So what are the search terminologies that I want to use for reproductive health? So reproductive health itself is one of the search terms that I want to use, okay? Then maybe maternal health, child health, and maybe family planning, which can also mean birth control can be used, okay? So just with those few words, let's see how we can do such a search to find out what is emanating from University of Health and Allied Sciences, all right? So I simply go for textual content. I want to search the document abstract, title, and then keyword. So I'm picking this, and I use the plus sign here to activate it in the search string. Then you see automatically it opens the braces for me. So all I have to type now is maternal or reproductive health first, right? So reproduct. Then I choose that well. I'll use asterisk here because if it's a reproduction or whatever, just as an example, a text, all right? Then health. I may say this should be an exact phrase, but quite a loose one. So I put that in brackets. Then I go for the Boolean or, because all the other terms I want to enter right now will mean the same concept as reproductive health. So in this second one, I'm going for maternal health. So maternal health. But I want maternal health to be searched as an exact phrase. So I want publications in which maternal health occurs as an exact phrase, all right? So I put that one in braces. In braces. Then, or birth control. A birth control tool should be, okay, it should also be a phrase, okay? It should be a phrase, so birth control. Because don't forget, Scopus said if we don't put it in quotation marks or the braces, the words can be searched apart. So it could be birth somewhere and control somewhere. That might not necessarily mean birth control. So birth control, but it's a loose phrase, or obstetric fistula. We are leaving that one very loose, all right? Now, after this, we want to search in conjunction with UHAS. So we want to find out in UHAS, has there been any publication with any of these themes? So we go to the AND operator. We add AND. But before we put in our search term, we want to search UHAS as an affiliation. And so we go for the affiliations code. That's a field code for affiliations. And we are using affiliations. So that there are several other affiliations: affiliation city, affiliation country, affiliation ID, everything. But now we are only interested in the affiliation. This one says it's a combined field that searches the following author address fields, affiliate city. So you see, affiliate here will take care of all these instead of us specifying any one of these. So I'll use the affiliate. So I use the plus sign here. And if I go back there, it opens the bracket for me to type the affiliation. And that's where I put University of Health and Allied Sciences. Now, here I must include Ghana because there may be other universities of health and life sciences. At least I know of one, I think Mendeley, which is in Tanzania or something. All right, so I add Ghana to specify that we are talking about UHAS of Ghana. Now, let's just try a search with this and see if it will return any syntax error. Then we'll look at what went wrong. Whoa. So there's no syntax error, but I hope you saw the process that we went through there. And this is the query. If you observe, there are only 2 documents. And what are these documents? They are right here for us. Knowledge of obstetric fistula among prenatal clinic attendees and midwives in Infantipim municipality. Azanu WK, Dasa ET, Agbenu, and Ofori and the rest. International Journal of Gynecology and Obstetrics. Then the second document, sources of support for women experiencing obstetrics. So it looks like it went more for obstetric fistula documents, right? Okay, so that is one. And then we can refine this search. Of course, if I go here for search, I can conduct another search. Okay, but this is in advanced. I can go back to basic search. If I click on basic right now, it asks for basic search. You've already gone through that. It allows me to do that. Of course, Scopus also keeps a history. So already it has seen we have done one search already with 2 results. And if you want to research, you want to revert to this particular search, you simply click on the results number here with the link, and it takes you back to the results. All right. So now, all I wanted to share on systematic searching is this fact that it is more procedural and it is more specific to a narrow area of focus in research, but is concerned with gathering all the evidence available in that narrow area. And so several techniques go into formulating the search query. The example that I gave, you saw the whole process that was involved in breaking down a particular SDG. The example search I have done right now was just a very simple, thing just for the purpose of the tutorial. But with the examples that I shared, looking at the documentation that I showed you, I want you to also go and just test it. Pick any of the SDGs. See if you can follow the process that I showed. Look at the SDG page. Look at the full name for the SDG. Go down to the tab on the targets and indicators. See if you can exhaustively identify relevant keywords that refer to that SDG. Then come look for any database that applies. For example, if you pick an SDG on food security or something, you might want to look into an Greek-oriented database. If you pick an SDG about global justice or, something like that, you might want to look into a database that deals with such issues. If you pick an SDG that is working on or is targeting health, then you might want to look at health. Maybe education, SDG 4, that's quality education or something. Of course, there is ERIC. ERIC is a database for education, so you might want to look there. So depending on what your focus or the topic, the discipline of what you are searching is, you might look for an appropriate database. And when you do so, you go and learn about that database. I told you, formulating a search query is a difficult and time-consuming task. So you can sit back, test it yourself. If you are trying and you're not getting it right, contact me, all right? Or contact your librarian. Your librarians are trained technical people who understand the workings of these things, and they can help you do all these advanced and systematic searching. But don't forget, the key issues of systematic searching is that you must document your method. So methodology is very important to make your processes replicable or your research or whatever reproducible. That is the most important thing. So I'm going back to the outline just to share with you some other embedded items, okay, for the search. If you look into my comments again, you realize that I have added some link for further learning. Okay, this is the John Hay Whitney Library, all right? The interesting thing about this place is that it gives you video tutorials, okay, how to conduct a systematic search, video tutorials on the step-by-step process. So there's an introduction, there's a video on it, systematic search, conducting a systematic review. As I mentioned, I didn't want to focus this on systematic reviews because the mix of backgrounds that we have on this call will not allow us to do that. But if you take this, you are actually going to go into something that is more aligned to systematic reviews. But it is very exhaustive, and I love the fact that there are video tutorials involved. So when you get the outline, simply click on that link within the comments on systematic search, and you will be able to access that whole thing. They are all YouTube videos. Click each one of them, follow through, understand exactly how a particular stage of the systematic search strategy is implemented. And of course, don't forget documentation of your process, writing down every single thing and building a sound query that your database can operate with, aligned to its syntax. That is the whole thing about systematic search. Now, to conclude this particular section on searching for the literature, I also want to give you further help because I know the brief tutorials that we have presented on this are not enough to give you the practical hands-on experience, all right? So the information you have received through this lesson is backed by sound practical, lessons that I'm also linking you out to. And one of such is this last one, the Libguides from Jstor. Jstor is also a database, mostly for the humanities and social sciences. Okay, so I'm sure some of you already have access to this through your university library or other subscription. So you go to Jstor, again, through the outline that I'm going to share with you anyway. And it has this free online course, okay, that it titles Research Basics, an open academic research skills course. Very interesting. It is just 3 modules. Module 1 is effective searching. So all the things that I have talked about right now, if you want to practicalize it, come to this tutorial. It is free. Module 2, establishing credibility. We have not spoken about that. So when you get your search results, you evaluate them. You determine the worth of the result that you have got, whether it is useful for answering the question that prompted the search in the first place. How do you go about that complex system of, giving credit to a particular or weighting a particular information resource in terms of its relevance and usefulness to your topic? That is what Module 2 deals with. Then, of course, citing scholarly work, which is actually the next presentation. In this case, we are focusing on Mendeley, but here you are going to learn about the principles and the practical aspects of what we call citation. All right, we will be dealing with Mendeley as a resource for citation and scholarly collaboration. So it is good for you to complete this research basis course that is available through Jstor. Just follow the link that I have embedded in the outline and you'll be here. The interesting thing about each of these modules is that after each of the videos that you actually watch, you are given a practice quiz. So you have a series of questions that will ask you to practice what you have learned. That's where the catchword is for me, having a hands-on feeling of all the things that I have said or what you'll be watching through this tutorial. Then, after practicing based on those quizzes on each of the topics under each module, you now have a module ending quiz. So at the end of the module, besides the practice quizzes that allow you to do the practical things, they now test your knowledge of either effective searching or establishing credibility for the information resource that you have retrieved or citing of the sources. So please try and get this particular course also done in order to finalize or hone your knowledge and skills on searching for the scientific or research literature. I thank you very much for sticking and staying with me through all these very complex, issues about searching. Do not forget, your librarian is there to support you through your academic and research journey, whatever level you may be. So do not forget that that is one of the critical and important services the library provides. In whatever environment you find yourself, locate your librarian or your information specialist or professional. They will be able to guide you, navigate this complex universe of information and publication and all of this stuff. So thank you so much. I am ending the session on searching here. My colleague Dominic is going to take you through the Mendeley Desktop. And if you watch again from the comments, I've indicated here that you select the version recommended for your system at the installer's site. And here I have included the link for the Mendeley Desktop. Now, don't forget, because Mendeley is transitioning to their new product, Mendeley Reference Manager, the Reference Manager has taken over the default Mendeley site. So you will not really easily get the Mendeley Desktop, which is the old but stable version of Mendeley. The Mendeley Reference Manager, which is the new product, is currently in beta. They are now testing and trying and updating features and all of that, removing bugs. So that one is not really a very stable version, but it is currently the version available on the main Mendeley site. So I have embedded the link to the Mendeley archives where you will see the current version or the last version for the old one, the Mendeley Desktop. You can see this desktop. The other one is Reference Manager. Now, when you get to see that whatever computer you have used to log in, the system will automatically detect it and give you a recommended version. So over here, simply click on the one. I am using a Microsoft Windows, it's a Windows 10 system. So it has quickly picked up my version and it's giving me this suggestion. And you can see below it says other platforms. So if someone is using a Mac OS X, this is their version. Ubuntu, like that, Linux. So when you go, make sure you are under the recommended for you, and then you click whatever version is recommended for your operating system. All right, good. That said, when Dominic is done, there will be a final one from me, and that will be on the new Reference Manager. Okay, I'll come again. This is the link to the Reference Manager here, the new one, and I'll come to, okay, I should have downloaded, but this is what really you'll get. As I mentioned, now on the Mendeley site, this is where to bring you straight. Mendeley Reference Manager for Desktop. Don't confuse this with Mendeley Desktop. They are two different things. If you observe, the Reference Manager has a very light red of their logo. The desktop version is a very deep red. That's one of the very easiest visual differences that you can make between the two. All right, so I'll come again with the Reference Manager bit. And so thanks a lot for your participation. And again, we are sorry that the original live recording had technical challenges and we couldn't present that to you. So we had to take the time to redo the whole presentation in bits and pieces like this. But again, it is a good thing because it helped us to actually respond to some of the feedbacks that we have collected from those who have actually answered the post survey, for us to know some other areas that we have to pay attention to. And so you would have observed, for those who have actually participated in the original webinar, that the content that we have here is way, way beyond what we did within that 2-hour presentation on Thursday, the 18th of November, 2021. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.